All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Wednesday, January 15th, right here on your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns on All in Horns, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. I'm Tanner Carlson. That's Jake Jimerson. And Jake, we're going to kind of go down and preview this final game of the college football season. It is the final game of the season. As much as it pains me, I will be watching, and I will be in full attentive mode watching Ohio State, Notre Dame. I'll actually be kind of looking forward to the game. As much as it pains me, as much as I wanted Texas to be there in this game playing Notre Dame, we will kind of discuss that. We'll kind of not break it down like we do Texas games, but we'll talk about it. And we're knowledgeable about both of these two opponents and what they've done throughout the regular season and kind of how they match up against one another. We got Texas, Oklahoma taking the hardwood later on tonight. Both teams looking for their first conference win in SEC play, starting out 0-3. In conference play are the Texas Longhorns and the Oklahoma Sooners. So that one will be a Red River showdown in Norman, Oklahoma. And then also, you've got the NFL playoffs. We're going to kind of give our take on Super Wildcard Weekend, and we will kind of give our thoughts on how that weekend played out and what we expect going into the divisional game and just some conversation pieces. It'll be a light day. We don't know anything further in terms of players declared any more than we do on our Tuesday episode. And so we will, if some major crazy news happens, we'll come out with a breaking news episode. But aside from that, this is your Wednesday episode for you. Jake, how's it going, man? And although football season is coming to a close, this is kind of the point in the season that we all look forward to getting to, because it's playoffs, it's national championships, it's Super Bowl time of the year. So for me, it's always bittersweet because I hate seeing football season go. It's my favorite time of year, from August through January into February. It's just my weekends are just filled with watching my favorite thing on earth. And then it's all over. And just like that, we got to hit the reset button.
Yeah, you go through that long, dreaded drought of no football.
It's just cold and dark all the time.
Yeah, especially when you have something to look forward to, which we have in Texas now with the revival of this program. It makes that off season even longer, which is the bad thing. Mm-hmm. But I'm doing good. I'm just like you, kind of dreading the end of football, and also really trying to keep track of the news of what Texas is doing, if they're looking at any portal guys, how the retention's going, because national championships are won and lost this time of year in a way, just with the build, not only with the actual national championship being played, but also the ability to retain players, whether that be stopping them from taking an offer from Phil Knight to go play for Oregon for $1 bazillion, or stop them from going to the NFL draft and getting them to stay another year. Much like Ohio State did this past year, getting a lot of key guys that were likely going to depart to stay and kind of loading up that roster for this year.
You're looking at, for me, a team who is retaining a ton of talent in, say, a Penn State. Drew Aller coming back, the two running backs coming back. And you give a little smirk, and I know how you feel about the Penn State quarterback, but those running backs are no joke there at Penn State, and so they're both coming back. The names are escaping me. Jake, help me out a little bit on the.
Oh, you can't do that to me. My mind has been so not on Penn State football.
This Katron Allen and
bad podcasting.
Katron Allen and Nick Singleton
there we go.
Are both coming back, and with Drew Aller, with James Franklin at the helm, the only guy they're really missing out of their offense going into next year is going to be the tight end, Tyler Warren. And so what can this offense build upon for Penn State with that core already being in place? And I think it's going to tell a lot with James Franklin and his ability to develop players. Are they going to take a huge step up? And if they do take a huge step up, we're looking at a possible dynamic of what we saw from Ohio State this year in terms of just the starters on the field coming back, playing well, the defense playing as well as they can at the end of the season. We'll see how that dynamic works. That remains to be proven true. And if you could trust it or not, that's a whole entire different story. But then also on the flip side of things, fully expect, Quinshon Judkins and Trayvon Henderson to enter the draft for Ohio State. Will Howard to enter the draft for Ohio State. And so there's going to be a big tide shifting. And I think I'm just trying to prove your point more so with whether that be transfer portal, whether that be retaining talent, whether that be in the recruiting, your recruiting class coming in, whatever that might look like in the college football landscape. As soon as the season ends, that's kind of when that rebuilding of all right, let's get into the next season and start preparing to make a run to the national championship this year.
Yeah, I mean that Ohio State team is going to look very different that Texas will play against to start the year this next season.
And Texas is going to look very different.
And Texas is going to look very different as we have discussed, and we still don't know exactly what they're going to look like because they're definitely not done in the portal, probably for this window and definitely for the spring window. Definitely going to bring in some more defensive linemen, probably a running back, probably a receiver.
They'll probably lose some guys.
Yep, they're going to lose some guys for sure. They're going to lose some. Whether it's anyone major is yet to be seen, and hopefully not. But I mean, there's still a lot of roster retainment and roster building to do for programs, and especially ones like Texas and Penn State that are trying to get over that hump. And then also just development, still developing the guys. Like you mentioned, can Drew Aller take a step up from being a quarterback that has kind of been just the same exact Penn State quarterback we've seen over the last 10 years. Christian Hackenberg looked great in shorts, throws the football great in shorts, and then against really good teams doesn't do anything. Though, to be fair to him, Penn State needs to get receivers because they don't have receivers who get open. And I will give Drew Aller a break on that. It doesn't matter. You have to be an incredible quarterback to make up for bad wide receiver play. And Penn State does not have good wide receiver play. No. I'd imagine they would be in the hunt for some portal wide receivers. And so it'd be interesting to see, how teams like that attack the season. Because if you're Penn State and you're getting these guys back, isn't this where you kind of push all your NIL chips
100%
to the 100%. Center of the table and go, whatever it takes money-wise to get the best roster we can to make a run a national title? We got to a semifinal this year. I realize there's still people who mean James Franklin can't win a big game. I don't really believe in that.
My thing's not so much can he or can't he win a big game as can he develop the players to help him win a big game? Because we're seeing, to me, a talent gap. There's a talent gap at Penn State compared to even a Michigan. But compared to Oregon, compared to Ohio State, there is a significant talent gap between those top three programs and Penn State. It's not that he can't win the big one. He's not developing the talent that those programs have. Now, is he recruiting that talent? No. Penn State's never going to out-recruit Oregon or out-recruit Ohio State. But they're right there to where if a little bit of development, or you catch Ohio State, Michigan on a kind of a year to where they're maybe trailing a little bit more, and you're kind of on the rise and getting guys to return like a Singleton, like an Allen, like an Ayler, however you say it, you have a good opportunity then to make a run within your conference. And then from there on, you get into the playoffs and you just do what you can.
Yeah. The tough thing for him at Penn State is they are a very highly ranked team every year because they do beat everyone they're supposed to beat. So you never get Ohio State overlooking you because it's always a top 10 matchup. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like a worst of all worlds for him because you are out talented. I mean, there's a talent gap there that is obvious and is always going to be there. Mm-hmm. And you're also not going to get Ohio State playing like they did against Nebraska. You're going to get Ohio State throwing their heavy punch. Yep. And so it's a lot to overcome for that program, but it's a program that's still capable of doing that. They're a proud program. They have a lot of tradition. They do have recruiting power. They do have NIL power. And so I know it's not really talking about Texas, but it's just interesting to look because Texas is in that rare level of the Ohio States, the Oregons, as far as where it comes to in the NIL era, they're always going to be able to more than likely build a really good roster.
Even a Miami, I mean,
The biggest thing
Miami's
that hurts Miami is they're in the ACC.
right. But I mean, an Alabama, a Georgia, all of those programs get money flooded to them by their donors and everything in terms of NIL deals. And Texas is in that rarefied air to where they can kind of do whatever they want. And LSU, they can kind of just do what you want in the off season, and you can afford it, and you can make it work on a longer lasting basis, and it not cripple you going forward. Like we mentioned in yesterday's episode, a Texas Tech, where they might go all in for 1 year, but they might crumble and fall for the next 4 if it doesn't pan out.
Yeah. And we're going to see that a lot, I think. I mean, Ole Miss,
especially especially when coaches are on the hot seat. You're going to see coaches go all in, very similar to Texas Tech, what they're doing with Joey McGuire right now. They're going to go all in on a year in which, hey, if I don't win 8, 9, 10 games or win the conference, I'm out of here. So we're going all in on NIL. We're pushing it in.
Yeah, and I think we're going to see a lot of programs that go all in and it fails miserably, and I think you could see some football programs really crumble for multiple years because of it. I don't think that's going to happen a lot, but I do think there's going to be teams that are in the Big 12 or in the ACC or some lower SEC team who do that and it fails miserably. Mm-hmm. I thought Ole Miss would maybe look like that, but it appears they do have some NIL staying power because
they're back at it again.
They're back at it again. We'll see how that roster looks, but for an Ole Miss, still what they did this last year, they put together a roster that was clearly at its peak a national championship contender and weren't able to even make the playoff. And so I'd say that was a year where it fell apart.
Mm-hmm. No, I would 100% agree with that. And then you've also got, teams like that are kind of benefiting from a not as powerhouse conference like a Clemson in the ACC or Notre Dame, who's not even in a conference, where they're not really competing with NIL or even involved in NIL as much, and yet they still find themselves in a playoff and then also competing for a national championship in Notre Dame.
Yeah. So with Clemson, I'm feeling a little Happy Gilmore vibe of the Happy learned how to putt. Clemson. The portal exists.
Yeah.
All of a sudden they're getting some portal players, and that is scary because Clemson's going to be good next year. I think. I mean, Klubnik, we've talked about how much he impressed us in that game against Texas. He's back. I believe that's official.
Their wide receivers, their starting outside guys were true freshmen this year. Like they're building something pretty impressive there.
Probably the second best wide receiver group Texas played against this year, other than Ohio State, which is not saying anything bad about Clemson wide receivers.
And they're always going to have a good defense with Dabo as the head coach. They're always going to be a sound, disciplined defensive team. They have been every year in his tenure anyway.
They did fire their defensive coordinator, maybe in large part because of that Texas game.
Texas broke them, yeah.
Yeah, but they were still not a bad they weren't a great. I don't think they were the Dabo standard this season, but they still showed. I mean, like their defense was good against South Carolina, at least not allowing points to be scored. There were a lot of yards, but I imagine Clemson's going to be in that upper echelon of teams next year that you're talking about as a national championship contender near the end of the year. This year felt like a rebuilding year from them, and they ended up in the playoff. And I think that's a lot to Dabo, and that was without him knowing the portal existed or knowing how to use it.
And now they won their conference too. On top of that,
yeah, and now they've learned how the portal. And so I was thinking that Happy Gilmore meme was Happy learned how to putt.
Yeah,
and it's Clemson using the portal.
Yeah, Dabo learned how to transfer portal. Jake, let's talk a little bit about this national championship game. Ohio State, Notre Dame. What are your kind of feelings about it? What are your vibes going into this game? As much as it pains us to talk about it, to me, is there Ryan Day pressure involved in this? There's also Marcus Freeman interest in NFL teams. That report came out, I believe, by Paracello and on the NFL Network. I think that's what the source was. It was a legit source, but yes, Marcus Freeman gaining NFL interest and going into this game, and yeah. So the coaching storyline between Day and Marcus Freeman, and then just these two teams, how they're playing. What are your storylines? What are you most looking forward to watching in this game? Just how are you feeling about the national championship game?
How I feel is it's not going to be a close game.
Yeah,
I think the national championship was played
at the Cotton
in
Bowl.
Arlington,
Yeah,
at the Cotton Bowl on Friday night. And that's not a slight to Notre Dame. I really like Marcus Freeman. I think he's an excellent coach. I think there are a vibes team, like you said. And maybe the vibes can ride them into, you get Ohio State on a bad game. I do think Notre Dame's defense can definitely have success in this game. The problem is they don't have the Georgia Achilles heel of not knowing how to stop running quarterbacks. I don't see a world where Notre Dame's offense is going to have a sliver of success, because I said that was the reason I picked them against Georgia. Their offense did nothing in that game.
yeah. No,
Really.
I mean, if you look at the Georgia and the Penn State game, their offense wasn't really the cause of them winning either one of those two games. It was, you get a couple big plays here and there, and you get an opportunistic defense who is far and away has the best turnover margin in the country in Notre Dame. And so they've kind of been living off of that. So if you can turn Will Howard over a couple of times and put your team in positive field position, will it be enough? I don't think so. I don't think, even if Notre Dame gets a couple of good special teams plays and they're kind of playing this gritty game of that benefits Notre Dame, and that's with defensive turnovers and playing field position and playing a slowed down game, I don't see them maybe even getting into the end zone.
Yeah, I mean, I look at they didn't really run the ball.
Unless there's just a breakdown in coverage. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, the thing is, for me, the path to victory for Notre Dame is Ohio State laying an egg.
Yeah.
And really on the offensive side of the ball, because like you said, I just have a hard time, against Penn State. They didn't really run the football well, from the quarterback or the running back position. Jeremiah Love had 11 carries for 45 yards with a long of 9. Good for 4.1 yards per carry. Riley Leonard was 15 of 13, 223 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. That's not going to get it done against Ohio State, even though it's not a terrible stat line. That's not going to get it done against Ohio State.
You can't turn the ball over.
And against Georgia, they did not run the ball well with the running backs again, but Riley Leonard carried them through the ground with 14 carries for 80 yards, just about 6 a carry. As a team, they only averaged 4.2, so that tells you how much he bulked that up. He threw for 90 yards in that game, and they won.
Yeah,
that is not going to fly against Ohio State.
No,
we have seen Texas play Ohio State and Georgia. Ohio State is a much better team than Georgia. Georgia just matched up against Texas better in a matchup sense than Ohio State did. But Ohio State's a better football team to me than Georgia by a large margin.
I would agree with that statement, Jake. I really would. In terms of the coaching storylines, obviously you've got two guys who are, trying to win their first national championship. Notre Dame hasn't won a national championship since the early 80s. Ohio State, it's been since 2014 with Ezekiel Elliott and the 3 quarterback system of Cardale Jones, JT Barrett, and there was another one thrown in there somewhere along the lines, Braxton Miller. And so that Ohio State team was coached under Urban Meyer. Ryan Day takes over shortly thereafter, and now he's got his opportunity to make his footprint in the Ohio State Buckeye lore. How much pressure is on Ryan Day?
All of it.
All of it. Marcus Freeman has no pressure in this game, in my opinion. I think, that's where I think there might be a little bit of a, not on the field, on paper, talent-wise, Ohio State. There's this mental side of a game in football that just sometimes it doesn't make sense to anybody. And you could just be playing with house money at this point in time for Notre Dame and just play freely and carefree and just, hey, we're out here just to try to win a national championship, try to win a football game. Whereas Ohio State, if I don't win this game, I'm still I might be on the chopping block. I might lose my job for Ryan Day.
Yeah, but at the same time, I feel like his pressure meter would have been higher going into the game against Texas, because I think you have to feel pretty comfortable as a head coach coaching this Ohio State team right now, the way they're playing, and going against Notre Dame right after you just beat Texas. You don't have to worry about motivating the players. It's a national championship. All you have to do is have a competent game plan.
Yeah.
And you win this game handedly.
Yeah.
No,
you're right.
I'll be placing a wager on Ohio State. I'll say that right now. I'm betting Ohio State to cover whatever the spread is. I don't even know what the spread is right now. I'll find it.
I believe it was Ohio State 8.
Oh, 8?
Yeah.
I thought it was like 10.5. I might hammer the 8-point spread and bet an alternate spread, which means I'll probably be wrong and lose all my money. But I truly believe, and I'm excited to see this. I think it's kind of I don't like Ohio State, but I can still respect the blue blood matchup it is from the standpoint of the helmets clashing.
Yeah.
And it would have been that way with Texas Notre Dame as well.
The final four were all cool, just classic uniform helmet matchups.
Yeah, the Notre Dame against Penn State was fun to watch just from a pure college football, purebred standpoint. It was a lot of fun to watch, but I have it's not impossible. Anything can happen. It's football, right? Wonky stuff happens. Weird games play out. Texas, Arizona State played out the way it did, and then Texas had Ohio State, right on the grasp, just a week and a half later. If Texas played like they did against Arizona State, or the game worked like that Arizona State game, they would have lost by 40 to Ohio State.
Yep.
But so college football's weird. Football's weird. Stupid stuff happens. The ball doinks off the field goal post and goes in. Sometimes the ball doinks off the field goal post twice. Yep. It happens all the time.
And it doesn't go in. Yeah. And it doesn't
go in. And so football's weird. So there's always there is a chance. I'm not saying there's a 0% chance Notre Dame's going to win. I'll never say that about a football game. But I will say here and tell you, Ohio State's going to destroy Notre Dame, and it's not going to be close.
Jake, this game getting pushed to January 20th. It's obviously the latest college football game has ever been played. It's now pushing into divisional round weekend of the NFL playoffs. How do you feel about this? Is this do you like it? For me, here, I'll give my answer first and foremost, is that longer football season means more football, which means happy Tanner. I mean, that's really all it comes down to. Is I like more football being played. I think it's really good football being played. And I'm never going to complain about there being too much football or football season being too long.
Yeah, if you're complaining about that, you're a loser. And
you're probably you're probably a Lakers fan.
Yeah, you're probably a Yankees, Lakers, and Chiefs fan, I guess would be the thing now rather than the Cowboys.
Yeah, no one roots for the Cowboys willingly.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I love it. I have long wanted the college football playoff to be around 12 teams, just because every other level of football has that. There's no reason there's this weird belief, this cultish belief that, well, if you're not undefeated, you don't deserve to play for national title. Why? It's not like that at any other level of college or high school or pro. It's not like that anywhere else. It's not like that in any other sport. Like, why are we doing this for just Division I college football?
Right.
So I like it. I will say, and this is a topic for the off season. I will have it on our doc as an off season topic. I think there's a valid argument for conference championships to be eliminated.
Okay. I'll leave it there. I'm not going to get into it because that conversation could be really long. But
yes,
I'll let you add it to the doc.
That's my take, because I do think it's relevant to your question. That's why I say it, not to tease it. Yeah. But I think there is a relevant conversation to whether that game should be played and whether it's somewhat of a disadvantage for the teams who play it. Yeah. Both teams, regardless of whether you win or lose.
We saw a huge disadvantage for Oregon winning the Big Ten championship game this year. And I'll just leave it at that.
Did either team in the national championship play in the Big Ten?
No.
Or in their conference championship titles? Texas was the only team in the Final Four who played for a conference championship.
Yeah. Jake, official opinions. We're going to make it official on the 12-team playoff. Now we know kind of how it played out. It does. We know what needs to be fixed, Jake. We know the automatic bid situation. We know all that situation. In terms of the 12-team college football playoffs, did we get the two best teams represented in college football to play for a national championship?
No. If it was, it would have been Ohio State. I realize people are going because Texas lost to Georgia twice, but it probably would have been Ohio State, Texas, or it would have been Ohio State, Georgia if Georgia was more healthy.
Yeah, I would say Georgia. I'd say a healthy Georgia team probably.
Yeah, Ohio State, Georgia, if Georgia's healthy, with Georgia, the way they were at the end, I think we just saw the national championship game, and maybe a random Notre Dame fan will watch this and be mad, and that's fine. We've talked about how much we like Marcus Freeman in that program, but yeah, no, I mean, I love the 12-team playoff. The format needs fixed. So yes to your question with a little asterisk mark of there's fixes that need to be made, but I would not go back. I do not want to go back to a 14 playoff, and I certainly don't want to go back to everything that happened before that.
Do we need a couple years in this format, in this 12-team college football playoff? No expansion, maybe not even the format, just some tweaks here and there, but just like a 12-team college football playoff. Do we need 2, 3, 4 years in it to say this does work, this isn't working? Do we need a larger sample sizes is what I'm saying.
The way I would choose to do it if I was running things, Jake Jimerson, college football playoff commissioner. Okay, here's what I'm doing. 12-team playoff, auto bids for conference champions, no auto buys. You seed the field. You pick your 12-team field. You seed that field based off their rankings. And I would just let that ride for multiple years.
Yeah.
That's how I would do it.
And just let it sit there, and just
I
let
don't
it
think
sit there.
16 teams is needed. I think 16 teams is going to happen.
Yeah.
But I don't think 16
agree.
teams, I think that's overkill.
Yeah.
I think 12 is perfect.
I think you actually, because the argument right now is some of the playoff games are watered down. And I think, first of all, I don't think that is true for a 12-team playoff. I do think you start reaching into that territory with 16 teams.
I think you do reach into that territory because
we need to actually
watch a Alabama get smoked just because their name is Alabama.
Yeah.
I don't have any interest in that.
Oh, sorry. I hit men's basketball. I'm trying to look at the ranking system of what 16 teams would actually look like. We're looking at Miami, Ole Miss, South Carolina, and Alabama as 4 additional teams to the.
So Ole Miss would be the only team out of that where I would say, yeah, if they get hot, they would have a chance. And that to me is an outlier this season. Because I think that Ole Miss team on a regular season doesn't lose 3 games. I don't know how they lost 3 games, to be honest with you.
Yeah. But yeah, so I'll say this about the 12-team playoff. I think I like it the way it is. I do think we need a more of a sample size. I think like anything else in life, you can't just base it off of 1 year, whether that's a TV show in season 1, you need a season 2 to finish it off. You need, well, maybe not The Acolyte, but there are certain TV shows out there in the world that some people write off in season 1. I mean, Breaking Bad nearly went under after season 2 and season 3. And then we never would have seen some of the greatest television ever created if people weren't just patient and let it ride out and let the story kind of tell it the way it needed to be told. It's the same thing in sports. College basketball has the system of it's perfect, and they're never going to change college basketball postseason, and they never need to. And that's where college football is trying to figure out. Once they figure it out, that's where I want to get to, where this is how we know it's structured and we're never changing it ever again.
Yeah, I'm ready to get to that point too, because I don't like this having to change it. We knew the 14 playoff. Even when they announced it, you immediately heard talks of expanding it. Mm-hmm. You knew it was going to get expanded at some point, and it was just a matter of waiting for it to happen and whether it was going to be 8 or 12 teams. And now you get the 12 team and you pretty much know it's going to change. And I'm all right with changing it, but I think it's going to expand even though I don't want it to. But again, I will say at the end of the day, I'll take a 16 team playoff over a 14 playoff over certainly over a BCS system and obviously over a Aggie ranking system.
Yeah.
The only way that they can win a national title. So
Yeah.
before the BCS. So it'll be interesting to see play out because we're going to find out really soon because this format right now is only locked in for next season. It will change after next season. I'm about 95% confident in that.
And the change might be an expansion is what you're getting at there. All right, Jake, speaking of playoffs, let's go to the next level up and get out of Saturday football and let's get into Sunday football. Super Wild Card Weekend. I will continue to call it Super Wild Card Weekend. No one can tell me otherwise, even if the NFL is trying to ban the Super out of Wild Card Weekend. Jake, let's start off with the Texans game. Let's just go in order in which these games were played. Texans, Chargers. Is the Texans defense legit? Do they have a chance to beat the Chiefs? Chargers future, and I think it's time that we have a Justin Herbert conversation.
Is the Texans defense legit? I mean, what is legit?
The offense, I'm not sold on at all. I don't think that that's a Super Bowl winning offense.
I'm sold on the Houston offense. It's not good.
Well, yeah, I'm sold that they're not.
It's not good.
I'm sold that they're not a Super Bowl winning offense. Yes, absolutely.
I'm selling on their offense. For sure.
Yeah. I'm sold that I'm selling.
I mean, I think the Texans defense is pretty good. They got a good scheme. They do have some talent, but all they did was win the right to lose in this next round. I'd be shocked if they had.
It would be the biggest surprise of the year.
It'd be the biggest surprise of the decade.
I mean, okay, but this Chiefs team is not the Chiefs team that we know.
They won 15 games.
Correct, but they're still not better than the previous Chiefs team that have won.
I don't care if they lost to the Texans at home in round 1 after going 15-2, really 15-1, because they played a practice squad team in their first playoff game. If I could slap you through the screen. If they lost their first playoff game at home after winning 2 straight Super Bowls and then going 15-2 and lost to the Houston freaking Texans in a year where no one thinks they're a good football team, that'd be one of the biggest playoff upsets in NFL history.
You're right. Jake, Chargers future, I think, is looking bright. They need some weapons.
Yeah.
They need some help at running back. They need some offensive line help. They need a little bit more consistency on defense. But Jim Harbaugh has this team, this culture where it needs to be. He's brought in a winning culture in year 1. I'm not sure he's ever been a head coach of an NFL team that didn't make the playoffs.
Maybe early in his career, but he's just a winner.
Maybe, yeah, he just is. Everywhere he goes, it doesn't
Both
matter.
Harbaughs.
Yeah, they're just winners. They just get their teams to the playoffs and they take it from there. And so I think I love the direction where they're headed. It can't be a Ladd McConkey offense. He can be their best player on offense. Don't get me wrong, but they're going to need some help. They're going to need to spread the ball around. They're going to need a running game because obviously that's what Harbaugh wants to do. And Herbert and I keep wanting to say college football playoffs. Herbert in the playoffs has not necessarily been, I'm the next star quarterback of this league, and I'm ready to compete with the likes of Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Patrick Mahomes.
No, I mean, granted, small sample size, 2 games.
Both really bad games.
But he threw more interceptions in one playoff game this year than he did an entire regular season.
The conversation needs to be had. He's in what, year 6?
Yeah, I mean, if he was a Cowboys quarterback, we'd be hearing some atrocious things said about him. Yeah. But instead, he plays with not a star on his helmet, so he gets the national media treatment of being the golden boy. And yeah, I mean, he stunk that game up. And granted, his offensive line is not great. No. I think that's the biggest takeaway I take from, because I still, as much as I want to sit here and trash Herbert just because of my fandom in the NFL and
Mhm.
how I feel about how the national media handles certain quarterbacks compared to others. I want to be the one who takes the higher road and saying, I still think Herbert's a good quarterback. He's not all world yet. I think he has potential to be that level of
The
quarterback.
conversation is had on the national media stage that he is, though. And I think that perception of him gets put in people's minds of, okay, well, if everyone's talking about you this way in the regular season, it's got to translate in the postseason at some point in time.
Yes. And for me, the takeaway for the Chargers is they need a better offensive line. They need more weapons.
And they've been
I think
working on
you
it. They
still
got Joe Alt at tackle. They got
Mhm.
Rashawn Slater at
It
tackle.
is
So you
better
have
than it's been
Yeah.
for a long time. That interior can get some work done.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Is more so the thing. I still, if you're a Chargers fan or you're the GM of the Chargers, or if you're Harbaugh, I think you still feel confident you have your franchise quarterback. I'll put it this way. But from the national media talking point, no, he is clearly a tier below those quarterbacks.
Mhm.
That is unquestionable right now until proven otherwise. Is he a good quarterback? Yes. Is he a quarterback that I think you can call a franchise quarterback? Yes, because to me, a franchise quarterback doesn't mean that you have to win 3 Super Bowls or be in the Super Bowl every year. He has the talent level. Now it's, can he take that step to being a Super Bowl type quarterback? Because right now he's not there, and that's obvious.
All right, Jake. Steelers, Ravens, complete blowout, a complete just Steelers
The
didn't look
same
like
Steelers game that we've watched for
the last month and a half.
7 years in the
Well,
playoffs.
facts, facts. Yeah, I'm glad you took that one step further. Jake, Mike Tomlin, I think Steeler fans are kind of starting to get tired of him constantly winning, I think, but not winning in the postseason. But you also have Russell Wilson as your starting quarterback. You've got George Pickens as your number one wide receiver threat. You've got a poor offensive line, and you don't have really a running game on offense. And so the defense is trying to carry you as much as it can. But then come playoff time, these teams are so familiar with how you run your offense and what you've gotten success with through the first portion of the season to win you football games in the regular season. These defenses in the playoffs are like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen against us. And then they completely shut it down. And all you need is, add a couple of scores here and there to beat the Steelers in the playoffs. And the Ravens got much more than just a couple here and there. But that's kind of what it seems like the recipe has been. My take on Mike Tomlin is he's a great head coach, one of the NFL's best current head coaches. I think that voice may be getting a little stale within that organization. I think a change of scenery would do him fantastic. I think if he goes somewhere else, which I don't think the GM, I don't think ownership is going to move him anywhere. I don't think they're going to fire him. I think they like him there. But if he was forced out and went somewhere else, I think he would succeed year one immediately wherever it is that he landed.
Yeah. I mean, if I was the Steelers right now, I would just go ahead and clean house. Not from a standpoint of this guy sucks. We got to change. You do it respectfully.
Yeah.
But you go new GM, you go new head coach, and you look at a different way of building the football team. And you maybe be okay with sucking for a year, and finally get a high draft pick and figure out the quarterback situation. They got a lot. The thing that sucks if you're a Steelers fan is you knew you weren't a Super Bowl contender this whole season, at least if you were realistic. You knew you weren't for the last like 8 years, and you just have to watch them start the season 9-1 every year. And as much as that's a first world problem kind of deal for an NFL team, it does get old just going to the playoffs. And
we've kind of, not as consistently as the Steelers, but as Cowboy fans, we've kind of been on the 8-8, mediocre, not good enough to win it all, not bad enough to get a good draft pick out of it.
yeah, or winning 12 games a year and losing in the first round of the playoffs. We've seen it. We've seen that a little bit as Cowboy fans. And so I think if you're the Steelers, you're just at the point where you go, okay, we can't just keep doing the same thing. The definition of sanity is doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, you got to change it up. That entire program, to bring in a college term, just needs a change of scenery and how they build it. With that said, Mike Tomlin will find a job almost immediately, I would think.
It would take less than
And
24 hours.
deservedly so.
And I would love for him to go to Dallas. I'm just going to put that on the record. Do you trust the Ravens and the Lamar Jackson playoff trust? Where is that at with you? And now here's where I was a couple years ago. Can Lamar Jackson can he even win a playoff game? That has been proven for the last couple of years. Yes, he can get now past the first round. He can get past the wild card round. Can he beat the Chiefs? Can he get over that hump? Whether that be in the AFC Championship game, whether that be in the divisional round, where is his stopping point? And that has been proven time and time again. No, he cannot. I still don't think that this Ravens team is quite there yet.
Yeah, I mean, I could see them making the Super Bowl because I mean they're a 1-point favorite in Buffalo right now on the spread, and I think it's a good matchup for the Ravens schematically. I think their offense is probably going to have a lot of success against Buffalo, and their defense has been good and able to get stops. And I think it's a really tough matchup for Buffalo.
Well, the Ravens, I think, kicked their ass earlier in the season. I think it was a complete blowout in like week 3 or something like that. I think. 35-10. Granted, Buffalo's that was week 4.
Right. Buffalo's playing a lot better football now than they were, but I think the Ravens could win that game, and then it's whether they can go to Arrowhead and win there. And I mean, I do agree with you that this Chiefs team has looked, but you also have to factor in at this point the Chiefs kicking it into another gear in the playoffs. But
they just do.
This is it. This is the year for me where the Ravens, it's like, okay, if you can't do it this year, when are you going to? Because you're playing your best football at the end of the year. They've gotten better as those seasons gone on, and then started playing for sure their best football towards the end of the season. And you have a road, I think, that even though it's tough and you have to go on the road against really good teams, I think your style of team travels well. Mm-hmm. You have a future first ballot Hall of Famer running back that is still somehow playing like he's in his prime. You have Lamar Jackson, who's had by far his best season, in my opinion. 41 touchdowns and 4 interceptions is undeniable.
Yeah.
And so if not this year, when? If you're the Ravens and you lose in the playoffs like this week to Buffalo, I would be in disarray as a Ravens fan.
Yeah, it would be tough. It would be tough. And then on the flip side, Jake Buffalo is kind of maybe in that same point in their tenure with Josh Allen. And they had a great wild card game against the Broncos. Broncos making the playoffs for the first time since the Peyton Manning Super Bowl. And so that seems like a decade ago. Wait, I think it was a decade ago. But Broncos future with Bo Nix, and then the Bills' current team right now with this Josh Allen, Sean McDermott combination on the sideline. If it doesn't work against Baltimore, is it time for a change at head coach for Buffalo?
Maybe a change at head coach, but
not Josh Allen. Josh Allen,
Josh Allen is a certified stud, I believe. But also, I will say with Buffalo, this was kind of supposed to be a little bit of a rebuilding year, not to miss the playoffs. But I don't think anyone was expecting Buffalo to be the 2 seed.
You and we discussed their roster during the offseason and the dismantling that occurred to that roster and free agency. And I said, who's their number 1 wide receiver? Who is Josh Allen going to be throwing to? He's going to have to play like Superman for them to make the playoffs. Well, he found something because he is the 2 seed and they look like one of the best teams in the entire league.
Yeah, so for Buffalo's future, I think they're in a good spot because they just kind of tore the roster down and they were still really good. And now you're going to be building that roster back up because cap space clears up and all that happens when you tear down a roster. And so the roster should get better from this point. But I do think the Sean McDermott question is fair. And I think the answer to that is if you lose to the Ravens at home, I think you have to make a move.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you talk to Josh Allen and see how he feels. Talk to him in closed doors.
I think he's got a great relationship with him. I think that
I'm not saying you let Josh Allen decide. Yeah. I'm saying you have a conversation with him to get his thoughts and you take it into consideration and you talk to players and you get a feel, you gauge
Well,
it, right?
you don't want to piss off your franchise MVP caliber quarterback and him want to go
Correct.
somewhere else. Yeah.
Correct. So there's ways to handle it, but I'm saying from the outside looking in, I would certainly be asking the question if I was a Bills fan of whether or not do you fire him and just throw a bag at Ben Johnson? I mean, that would certainly be going through my head if you lose to the Ravens.
Yeah. Jake, Bo Nix, what was your overall takeaway on his rookie season? Him and Sean Payton's relationship, getting Denver back into the playoffs. Was it just a favorable schedule that got them there where things just kind of happened to go their way? You're not a Bo Nix fan. You have gone and told me that Bo Nix is one of the most overrated college football players of all time. He's not going to do anything in the NFL. Where are you on Bo Nix now as his rookie year comes to a close? Had a good season, good solid season, got to the playoffs, lost miserably in the first round.
I've been such a Bo Nix hater. I mean, just because the national media crowned him when he sucked, and
As
he
a freshman
played
at
long
Auburn?
enough. Yeah, and he sucked his whole college career until he went to Oregon, and he was very good at Oregon. Then I stood with my guns and was like, no, he's going to suck in the NFL. He had a really good rookie season. We'll see where it goes.
We'll see where it goes.
That is my full statement from the Bo Nix Hater Club currently, because I refuse to cave, but I also refuse to be stubborn and sit there and go, he sucks, when he just took a team to the playoffs. He hadn't been in the playoffs in a decade and looked pretty damn good most of the time when doing it.
Yeah.
And I have some friends who are Bronco fans and they hated it when they drafted him. So
yeah,
I will not hear any slander from people on this subject. But we are reviewing and we are monitoring the situation over here at the Hater Club of Bo Nix. And there is some concern in the building.
All right. The Packers laid an egg against the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC. And it was the Packers played like Dallas versus the Packers last year is kind of how they came out and played. Eagles should have obliterated them. The fact that the Eagles didn't obliterate them would cause a little bit of question, or hey, you just take a playoff win when you can take a playoff win. 2 seeds are now 9-1 against 7 seeds. That 2 seed was Dallas last year, losing to this Green Bay Packers team led by Jordan Love. This is a Dallas Cowboys segment. I'm just going to let that be known to everybody. Dallas is the only thing that I thought about this entire game between Philly and Green Bay. Dallas Cowboys
when
was
they
the only
fumbled
thing.
the open kickoff, I wanted to.
It's
all the anger that I've held back all season of not caring about the Cowboys. This for 1 year, the first year of my life ever that I've skipped games. All the rage started to come under my skin when immediately I turned the game on. They fumbled the opening kick, and I wanted to kick my television.
And Jordan Love throws 2 interceptions in the first half, and I'm just like, oh, you're kidding me. This is seriously what we're doing
inaccurate
here?
And looks bad.
Just
it's not
throws.
It didn't even feel like it felt like Philly played terrible.
And Philly dominated.
It just didn't matter because the Packers were just throwing it away. They fumbled it 3 times. They only lost 1 of them. And that was the opening kickoff. And Jordan Love had 0 touchdowns and 3 picks. They actually ran the ball pretty well.
Josh Jacobs is good. He played well. Yeah.
But yeah, and to be fair to the Packers, they were really banged up at the wide receiver position.
Oh, and they got more banged up as the game went on. I mean, they had a player down every other play.
So for the Packers, you have some excuses cooked into this cake, but your defense kept you in the game too. If you're Green Bay, I don't think you expected that, but I guess Jordan Love is just going to live off of destroying the Cowboys, and he'll be great forever because of that. But he has a turnover issue. He definitely throws.
Still the youngest team in the playoffs, even younger than the Texans.
And that's the biggest bright side, right? You're in the toughest division, and you still made the playoffs with 11 wins. And you were super banged up, and you lost to a 14-3 Philadelphia team on the road.
Yeah.
And while not playing well at all and giving the ball to them 4 times, on 4 turnovers to Philly 0.
And was actually in this game at one point.
Yeah, it was I believe it was a 1 possession game in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And so there are positives to come out of this from Green Bay, but just as a Cowboys fan, this game pissed me off to no end because right immediately when they fumbled opening kickoff, I was like, you got the ball first and you just went right down the field and scored in 2 seconds against Dallas last year. And now you can't even get the ball first when you actually are receiving the ball first again. You just fumbled away and Philly scores a touchdown. Yeah. Where was that a year ago?
Yeah. It was very reminiscent of the Green Bay game, the Aaron Rodgers to Jared Cook completion, and then they go play in the NFC Championship game against Atlanta. And Mason Crosby misses like 3 makeable field goals. They've got just drop passes all over the place.
I don't like fumbling. This segment. I don't like this segment. We're over time.
That's exactly what it reminded me of. All right, commies, Jake. We'll talk about Jaden Daniels, rookie quarterback. I think Jaden Daniels is awesome. I hate admitting that any player for Washington is awesome, but he's awesome. Doinked it in for the win with the OCD kicker, the amount of hair straightening that the kicker did. Hey, whatever works. If you can do this and you can win your team a playoff game, then by all means, keep doing it. But should Todd Bowles be fired for Tampa Bay? Yeah, he's terrible. He's terrible. Awful coaching.
Yeah, I mean you had an offense that just carried you, and he's a defensive head coach.
Yeah.
Game management issues. I mean, you kind of name it. Tampa needs to build the roster differently for sure. There's big slots to fill, but yeah, if I was a Tampa fan, I'd want a new head coach.
I would have wanted one going into this season, to be completely honest with you. I was already kind of out on Todd Bowles anyway, and then just the way he managed that playoff game, even worse. 4th rookie to win a playoff game on the road all time. First time since 2012. Coincidentally, that happened against Washington. That was Russell Wilson with the Seattle Seahawks, and that was the infamous Robert Griffin III game. His ACL popped, got destroyed, and basically ruined the rest of his career because they kept playing him. So anyway, and then final, Jake, just went final as we are recording this. Rams beating the Vikings 27-9, and it felt to me as though Sean McVay liked this matchup with Minnesota and kind of purposely maybe wanted this matchup as the 4 seed and not win in the final week of the season to then propel them to the 3 seed over Tampa Bay to play Washington. I think he wanted to play this Minnesota team, although Minnesota 14-3 on the season, couldn't really do anything. Sam Darnold finally kind of started playing like Sam Darnold the last 2 games that Minnesota played, whether that be the season finale against Detroit and then in this playoff game.
Yeah, so there's 2 sides to this coin for the Viking fans, I would think, and just for that franchise in general. One, it sucks because you're one of the most snake-bitten franchises in the NFL, and it just feels like every time you have a really good season and it feels like the vibes are there and everything's going right, it falls apart in the playoffs. I speak from experience. As a Cowboys fan that is only 30 years old.
We've seen it all. Except for a Super Bowl.
Yeah, or an NFC title game. But I digress. And
so turning into a Cowboys podcast.
Yep. So for Minnesota, it sucks because you won 14 games and then you lose to the Rams in a neutral site game. And that hurts, but at the same time, I think there's a little bright side here of, okay, that saved us from paying Sam Darnold.
Yeah, because now you don't have to worry about the contract that came up. They paid him 1 year for $10 million, I believe was this year's contract. That 1 year is up. You don't have to worry about re-signing him. You can go with J.J. McCarthy, the guy you drafted in the first round. You can let him establish that relationship with a very good head coach in Kevin McConnell. You've got Jordan Addison. You've got Justin Jefferson. You've got a rookie that you can keep on a rookie contract and then a you also have the 5th-year option because he was a first rounder. So you've got the next 4 years to not have to necessarily worry about paying your quarterback, and you can build a roster around him. It all comes down to, is JJ McCarthy going to be capable of running this franchise to continual playoff berths and competing with the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers in that division?
Yeah, if you're Minnesota, the formula is simple right now from a roster building perspective. You have
Yeah.
such a great core in place.
Yep.
You go forward assuming JJ McCarthy's going to be the guy.
You
He
need
looked good in
offensive line.
preseason. That doesn't mean much. What you did you say? What'd you say about the offensive line?
You need offensive line.
That's so yeah. I was making sure you didn't say it was a good offensive line because we were going to disagree. But you have the core of Hawkinson, Jefferson, and Addison. And you have some pretty good receivers even outside of that. You got Aaron Jones at running back. I'm not sure what his contract looks like. So maybe you have to look at a running back at some point, but you build offensive line and you build defense.
Yep.
And you hope JJ McCarthy is that dude. And then you try to win a Super Bowl under his rookie contract and you go from there.
Yep.
That you have the head coach, you have all the right things in place. And I think this year proved that more than anything, being able to do what they did with Sam Darnold at quarterback. And you got the relief of not maybe making an NFC title game like you did with Case Keenum going, do we need to pay him? Do we not?
Right.
Instead, it's like, okay, well, we don't pay him. We move on. We have a plan going forward. How well can you execute it and build the rest of that roster out to try to win a Super Bowl? Because they're certainly one of those teams that's trying to win a Super Bowl within the next 3 to 4 years at the least.
They now have a 4-year window, and they know what that window is.
An obvious window. And that window can be longer than that, but they have a clear and obvious window of 4 years right now.
Yeah. And you know what? Maybe that window shuts closed on JJ McCarthy in year 2. We don't know that, obviously, but you at least, like we said, you know what the plan is. It's very simple. This is what you got to do. You continue to build defense. You build an offensive line. You've got the skill positions. You've got the coaching. You just need to know what you have at quarterback. You drafted the guy very high in the first round. Hopefully he pans out. That's going to do it for our NFL playoff talk. Obviously, divisional round will come up. I enjoyed doing this. This episode is extremely long because of it, but we will, once college football dies down and all we have is NFL, we'll probably dive into it a little bit more as well. But we will continue to keep you updated on all things Texas Longhorns. Before we go, Jake, Texas OU, keys to the game, anything that you're looking forward out of this Texas game, and maybe a final prediction.
There's nothing I'm looking forward to. Keys to the game would
Trey
be
Johnson. Trey Johnson.
Sorry, you're right. Which again, do I look forward to that? Watching us waste such a great talent. But yeah, I do enjoy watching him play basketball. So keys to the game: hire a new offensive staff to run a real offense.
Okay, that would help.
So I guess share the ball, get more than 10 assists finally.
Passing.
Use Trey Johnson a lot. And rebound.
Trust me, they do, but they just don't use anybody else around him. But rebound, passing, and score more baskets than Oklahoma. You probably have a good
SEC
chance
is
of
all
winning.
about scoring. I'm not going to bother talking about defense this season. The best teams in the SEC are scoring 90 points a game.
Yeah, it
they are.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. I know. Jake, just for everybody's tidbits
prediction.
OU 0-3 in SEC play. Their losses: Bama, A&M, Georgia, Texas 0-3 in the SEC. There are 5 0-3 teams in the SEC: OU, Texas, LSU, South Carolina, and Arkansas. Texas and OU, one of them will come away with a win tonight. Final prediction, Jake, go ahead.
I said that Texas was going to start 0-5 in SEC play. I might extend that when I look further.
I just want Rodney Terry out, so whatever helps that cause.
So I'm sticking with that. I have OU winning 82-75. It'll be a tough, gritty loss, and will just be another L in the column of SEC play, of which I think Texas is only going to win 1 or 2 SEC games, to be quite honest.
I think this is going to be one of those 1 or 2 games. I think Texas has been building momentum with those tough, gritty losses to Auburn and Tennessee. And I think Trey Johnson gets his Longhorn moment. One game, one highlight that we can all look back on and say, yeah, Trey Johnson did something cool for us. I think he gets a buzzer beater and he wins the game 75-74 in Norman.
His Dylan Gabriel moment for OU.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. That's all I want. That's all I want. All I need. All I'm asking for out of this team is a Trey Johnson moment. And I just want a game winner, a buzzer beater.
And I hope this basketball team turns it around and can make a tournament. It's just, I'm in a very dark spot with them because it's been so bad to watch. And I've watched these games.
It's horrible.
And it's just such an unfun brand of basketball to watch. And just being so out on Rodney Terry after riding that wave of the Elite Eight a few years ago.
It's hard to stay committed. Yeah, it's hard to stay committed to the program right now as fans to just.
And it's hard to say anything positive when there's been quite literally nothing positive this season other than watching Trey Johnson play basketball, which I'm sorry, that's just not enough. That is a negative at the same time because you're wasting that talent.
Yeah, and you're just going to see him play in the NBA next year for Detroit or something. I don't know. But all right, Jake, that's going to do it for today's episode. Over an hour long. I think our first hour-long podcast that we've had.
It's because we brought up the Cowboys. That's
yeah. We brought up team building with the Texas Longhorns and Penn State and national championship little preview talk. And so yeah, we went NFL playoffs. We had a good episode, fun episode. Good job. All right, these episodes drop Tuesday through Saturday at noon. Please like, share, subscribe for your daily fix of all things Texas Longhorns right here on All in Horns, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. I'm Tanner Carlson. That's Jake Jimerson. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, welcome.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.